Now, sending out viruses, hijacking social media accounts, and attacking computer networks. Those may sound like hackers' techniques, but they're also in the arsenal of Britain's spies. According to leaks from Edward Snowden, RT's Polly Boyko takes apart the tactics being used by GCHQ.
The list of GCHQ's latest antics reads a bit like a cartoon villain's manual. Edward Snowden's revealed that a covert unit within the agency is messing with targets' social media accounts. So they're changing their profile pictures on Facebook, they're posting and deleting statuses, and they're sending cryptic messages to their friends and family containing disinformation about them. Now, GCHQ's Joint Intelligence Threat Research Group even uses unwitting journalists to funnel information about potential targets. And they're also into honey traps. They pose as attractive women online in order to get potential targets to meet with them in person.
I think what's unique in this area, it's the first public proof that we've seen that serious issues of illegality have been brought forward. The interference with other people's communications, the violation of the privacy of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. If the government knows everything about you, information is power, and then they have enormous power over you. We always say something interesting here with all these revelations. When does the blackmail start?
GCHQ isn't a spy agency like MI5 or MI6. It's a government agency tasked with collecting and analysing data. And yet these most recent revelations show that their arsenal includes sending viruses and launching denial-of-service attacks against websites.
The attempt to do denial-of-service attacks on organizations they don't like are deliberate attempts to obstruct, to deceive. I think was the phrase they used. They call it deny, disrupt, degrade, and deceive. I mean, it's like a James Bond movie. But this is the stuff they're doing and have been doing for years. But this is the first proof that anybody's had that they've actually done it.
And yet hackers who don't work for GCHQ face prison if they do the same. And those campaigning for civil liberties here in Britain say they want to know why. Polly Boyko, RT, London.
And GCHQ may be playing dirty, but it's still lagging behind its larger partner, America's National Security Agency, when it comes to the scale of its spying operations. An Internet freedom campaigner told us that mass online surveillance is making people increasingly reluctant to speak out.
I don't see anybody advocating for the removal of curtains in everybody's house because we have nothing to hide. I think that there's an expectation of privacy here in the U.S. and around the world that's not being respected. And when that expectation is not respected, free speech suffers. We are much less willing to speak our minds online or offline if we know we're being watched and recorded and tracked. We're much less willing to engage in political activism, to assemble, to organize ourselves for whatever causes we believe in if we feel like the authorities are watching our every move. And even if the authorities right now might not necessarily be antithetical to the things that we believe in, maybe the next president or the next Congress or the next government will be, and they'll be able to use all of this data that they're collecting against us.
If you're a regular internet user, you've probably perused a message board or comment section of a website and wondered why so many people write inflammatory, horrible, and downright insane diatribes. After all, in real life, most people don't communicate with each other through racist, homophobic, and nasty insults. So is it merely anonymity leading to this type of vitriol on the internet, or is something else at play? Well, thanks to a newly released Edward Snowden document by journalist Glenn Greenwald, we now know some of these comments probably aren't coming from members of the general public at all. In an article titled, "How Covert Agents Infiltrate the Internet to Manipulate, Deceive, and Destroy Reputations," Greenwald outlines how intelligence agencies use online troll tactics to influence real-world outcomes. The documents were obtained by Greenwald from the UK's NSA counterpart, GCHQ, and its uber-secretive Joint Threat Research Intelligence Group unit, or JTRIG. See, JTRIG's mission is to destroy the reputation of specific targets by both releasing false and damning information about them and manipulating cyber conversations to affect public perception. And this program goes way beyond just posting nasty comments, guys. According to the top secret slides, which were shared with intelligence agencies in the US, Australia, Canada, and New Zealand, JTRIG employs tactics such as honey trapping, where online affairs are created for blackmail purposes, changing the target's photos on social networking sites, writing blogs pretending to be a victim of the target, and even emailing and texting incriminatory messages to the target's friends and colleagues. But JTRIG doesn't just stop at sabotaging specific individuals online. The unit also employs tactics for taking down entire companies. These tactics include leaking confidential business information to other corporations or the press, posting negative information on online forums, and getting involved in business deals to ruin relationships. And just in case JTRIG's agents are still confused about what their mission exactly is, another site explicitly states that the whole purpose of the program is, quote, using online techniques to make something happen in the real or cyber world. All of this is summed up in the catchy slogan of the 4 Ds: deny, disrupt, degrade, and deceive. How cute.
Gaslighting is any behavior or imparting of information that has the effect of making the target distrust their own perception. If you feel like it's cold but everyone tells you it's hot, you start to doubt your reality testing faculties. Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse that involves an increasing frequency of systematic withholding of factual information from, and/or providing false information to the target, having the gradual effect of making the victim anxious, confused, and less able to trust his or her own memory and perception. Gaslighting tends to intersect with other tactics mentioned such as street theater, cryptic references, themes, but generally involves sabotage of a person's belongings and perspective, in order to disturb the target's peace of mind. The goal is to confuse the target to the point where he/she cannot trust their own memories or perspective. Street theater is gaslighting. Via street theater, gaslighting is carried out by networking of stalkers who share some of the same profile information and disinformation about the target. While participating in staged events around the target, this info and disinfo is mentioned to, or out loud around, the target. The basic idea is to let the target know that personal information, personal data or things said and done in the target's home, for example, is known about them. Oftentimes in ongoing harassment the most mundane things are mentioned, such as a phrase the target said earlier that morning, or mentioning an internet site that was visited, etc. This is meant to give the target the impression that everything they do is monitored. In most cases disinformation is also mentioned, but is only pieced together by the target after several run-ins with street theater stalkers. This disinfo can't be the most disturbing, because the target is left to wonder why so many people are referring to the same topics or exact phrases, themes. After many run-ins the target can often discern who is a stalker by their demeanor, sometimes their gleefully malicious attitude alone, before any new disinfo references are mentioned. Neuro-linguistic programming to instill negative emotions and associations. Again, with seemingly meaningless repetitious phrases, the idea is to confuse the target, who may start questioning their senses if/when they hear several people mention the same oddly phrased set of words, or if the same topic is brought up all around, while having no real significance in the target's experience. Cryptic references, themes is gaslighting. This happens in street theater, but also passing conversation with friends and family members. When the target is profiled, or, as in my case, an explosion event like covert drugging, is used to mine information about the target's fears and weaknesses, this information is used to create a collection of key phrases and topics. These triggers are then mentioned in the most casual conversations in an attempt to confuse and upset the target. To complicate matters, as the target starts seeing patterns in the themes, these often come up in conversation from harmless sources, in the way that information normally spreads throughout culture. We all know the example of coming across a new word, only to hear it 5 times throughout the next few days. These organically generated themes tend to make isolating gaslighting rather difficult, if one is in the thick of a campaign of manufactured coincidence. Break-ins and tampering is gaslighting. Gaslighting in this form is the most basic type, in that the goal is to make the target feel confused or crazy because items go missing or are moved. Quite often there is no sign of break-in, except that one or a few items will be missing or moved to other locations. In my own experiences, one time the front door had been left unlocked, and a false work order paper left on the kitchen counter. Another time legal documents pertaining to the custody of my son were removed, and I had to exert effort to search and eventually replace the documents, thus losing critical time to formulate my case in the custody suit. Another time clothes of mine had been drug around and left in various places. A book that accomplices had given me was left next to me while I slept. Light bulbs have been changed, small items moved around, and windows and doors left unsecured. Anytime I mentioned these things to others, they would tell me I was making connections where there weren't any. Some well-meaning people will try to tell the target that these are just normal events of misplaced items and forgetfulness. And those with ill intentions do the same, but generally there is also a strong pressure implied that the target better stop acting crazy if he/she wants to continue being thought of as a reasonable person. I also experienced the most active stalkers responding to my mention of things being tampered with by saying, "So what do you make of that?" implying a barely veiled malicious glee of sorts. In this way, stalkers seem to enjoy making it known to the target that any attempt to share the gaslighting events with others will only isolate them further from others, who may have a hard time believing that these events are other than normal misfortunes. Gaslighting by friends and family. Oftentimes people closest to the target are approached and fed various lies and programming long before the target even knows that he/she has become a target. When the target tries to relate the events that are happening, the trusted friends and family tell the target various forms of "no, it's your imagination, that's just not likely." And if the target presses them once the stalking events become very intense, the target is subtly encouraged to normalize and quit mentioning the signs of stalking that they see. In my experience, friends and family members are the worst/most effective wielders of gaslighting, as the target, searching for meaning and support, does his/her best to take the supportive advice to heart and regain some semblance of normalcy in their lives. Essentially, this push to have the target fall in line and obey normal life dictates, while still being harassed by stranger stalkers and putting up with various other tactics, is forced to live in two worlds. Clearly, this is the very definition of gaslighting. If left suspended in this state, the target may begin to doubt their own experiences, memory, and their very self. Induced self-doubt is, indeed, terroristic by its very nature. During the first explosive terrorist attacks on me, I was told again and again, by loving family and friends, that I needed to move forward and, essentially, forget about the traumatic events. And again these gaslighting precursors led me into increasingly dangerous situations, where I could not trust my own intuition about the danger I was walking into further explosion events. Not that these people did this intentionally. Not at all. The ones closest to me, it seems, just really care about me, and it's easier for them to see what I report as delusional than true. There are other issues at work there, but the point is that gaslighting is not always intentional. So, gaslighting permeates the gang stalking experience from day one. As the terroristic events build, the target comes to expect them around every corner. Then as the target tries to regroup and find normal life again, gaslighting, whether intentional or reactionary, as from target's family members, threatens to further complicate the target's intuition and decision-making capability. Gaslighting is at the heart of all gang stalking. Throughout the stalking campaign, whether to confuse or frighten the target, the goal is incessant psychological provocation that, if left misunderstood, or is not countered by the target through disconnection with these vectors of attack, may result in psychological breakdown. An excellent book that gives many examples of unconscious gaslighting and indoctrination, see Gaslighting, The Double Whammy, Interrogation and Other Methods of Covert Control in Psychotherapy and Analysis. Along with the examples of covert control, are many examples of ways a target of such methods of control can respond in order to defuse the covert messages.
U.S. Patent 5356368, October 18th, 1994. Method of and apparatus for inducing desired states of consciousness. Mind control. Patent issued to Robert A. Monroe. This technology and device can induce these states of consciousness: alert and awake, relaxed, concentration, attention. Inducing various states of sleep was done by Monroe earlier in U.S. Patent 3884218. And this device can do that too, and more. This patent says so. This is not theory. This device uses pre-recorded brain waves to force your mind to follow those brain waves and feel what you are told to feel. There's some pre-recorded brain waves there. Here's a little map of the human brain and the frequencies. These are all the schematics for the device. The patent covers how it operates and then the device itself. There's some CAT scans of human brains in the various states of consciousness. Here are all the pre-recorded brain waves that they know that they recorded and that this device can implant in your brain. Notice the device is named the Mood Minder. And here's the background of the invention. The invention relates to an improved method of inducing desired states of consciousness, including different levels of sleep in human beings, using a technique known as frequency following response, developed by the present inventor. This invention also relates to apparatus for performing the method. A number of areas of applicability of the invention are described in accordance with different preferred embodiments. The present inventor discovered that the human brain could be entrained to output brainwave patterns, these different frequencies, while frequencies corresponding to these different levels of sleep are not audible, you can't hear them, by superimposing those frequencies on some type of sound, such as music, it was determined to be possible to induce desired levels of sleep. The individual listening to the music would hear the low frequencies with the desired effect on brain activity.
Effectively, all consciousness is due to electromagnetic patterns generated within the brain. What we do is imitate what the brain normally does and apply it experimentally.
Where are these thoughts coming from?
What Dr. Persinger is saying is that virtually any mental state can be artificially injected into a human brain from an exterior source. The most frightening thing is that the means for doing this already exists in a fully operational form on a worldwide basis. Quote, "The power levels for these amplitudes are similar to those associated with the signals generated globally by radio and communication system. Within the last 2 decades, a potential has emerged which was improbable, but which is now marginally feasible. This potential is the technical capability to influence directly the major portion of the approximately 6 billion brains of the human species by generating neural information within a physical medium within which all members of the species are immersed." Unquote. Dr. Persinger's message, minus the jargon, is that the entire human race can be controlled through the use of electromagnetic influence piggybacked on television and radio networks or other technological means.
Now, the interesting thing about the brainwave patterns and frequencies that have been recorded by Monroe, they can also be transmitted by microwave. So this technology also has application in silent sound. The recording of brainwaves of these positive things, like being alert and awake, relaxed, concentration, they can also record other feelings, other brain waves that are negative, and pump those into your head.